Hello and welcome back to the Pin Podcast. We're on episode number 17 and I'm so excited and thankful for all of you that are listening. It means so much to me. And make sure that if you're listening in to follow, subscribe. If you're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, or even on YouTube if you want to see me and the beautiful guest today. And make sure if you want to ask any questions to the guest or look at upcoming guests, make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Pin Podcast Official. And you could also text us at 1-833-4A-PinUp. And today I am so humbled that we have a sponsor. We have Wax Poetic Clothing. And just like my podcast where we talk about modern topics with a vintage flair, Wax Poetic Clothing does just that. They provide clothing that has a nostalgic look to them, but yet modern and comfortable, which is everything that we really need. It is handmade here in the U.S., veteran-owned, woman-owned, and what else do you need? She has a beautiful collection that is coming out for the spooky season, so make sure to check her out at the Wax Poetic Clothing on Instagram or on her website, waxpoeticclothing.com. Now, today I have a very special guest. Her name is Sara. I knew.
That's fine. Yes.
I got it.
You did.
She's an antique jewelry dealer and a opera singer. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sorry for I know I asked you for your name before.
No, you got it perfectly.
Perfect.
You nailed it.
So tell my listeners a little bit about you.
So, I am a professional opera singer, and I have always been obsessed with vintage clothing, vintage jewelry. I think those things really go hand in hand with my opera profession because so much of the training is, really learning about like the glamorous art history of things. So, the style, what different characters are wearing. We spend a lot of time learning about, the history of the pieces. So how did the premiere go over? And then you start thinking like, well, what were people wearing when this opera premiered? And like, what were they doing? And what was the scene like? So I think I've always loved like just that glamorous escapism of fine art of the past. And then also one of the main things that got me into the performing arts was the costumes. I mean, it's like the Gorgeous. Most amazing thing. It's so much fun. So when I was like 16, that's when I decided that I wanted to start studying opera and start training to be an opera singer. And it was also the same time that I just kind of started cultivating this obsession with antique and vintage fine jewelry. So it's been like a 15 plus year obsession. And 2.5 years ago, I finally took the plunge and I was like, you know what? If I turn this obsession into a business, I can actually rescue all of these amazing pieces of, antique and vintage fine jewelry. Find them a good home because, I always wanted to buy everything that I saw and rescue it and keep it safe and keep it from being melted. But as a freelance opera singer, that wasn't in my budget. I couldn't just buy myself diamonds every day. But now I can. They're just not for me. So it's really been a dream.
And I have a question. Was there a specific piece of jewelry that you found that kickstarted it, like something that stood out?
Yeah. Well, my first piece of vintage jewelry was from my grandparents when I was 16, and I asked for like an old ring for my 16th birthday, and they got me this little Art Deco white gold box ring, and it had a little old European cut diamond in it. And that was the first time that I had heard the terminology. I took it to the jeweler and he was like, oh, this is, an old European cut diamond. This ring was probably made like 1920s, 1930s. And I just got so excited. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I own something that like someone wore in the 1920s. How cool is that? And so that was the piece that like really kicked it off. I still have it. And yeah, I think I've always loved like antique shopping and going to estate sales. So I just kept seeing things that I was like, oh, if I could, like that's something that I would want to curate and rescue and rehome.
And now you have.
Yeah.
And you
It's
travel
amazing.
with opera. So you're able to see a lot more than just like the same thing around. Like me, I would just see things around South Florida, but you'll be able to see things everywhere.
I have to tell you, you're in the absolute best place for antique jewelry shopping.
Oh.
South Florida is like a hotbed of amazing pieces. So I always like make trips to go to Florida.
Have you ever been to the antique jewelry show that they have during Art Deco weekend here?
I haven't, but it's on my list, especially now that like we can't really travel. I have so many places that I'm like, oh, I want to go. Like I have a list of things I want to do.
There was some I went in January and there was so many beautiful, it was a lot of silver. I was surprised to see a lot of silver, but there was also jewelry.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Like silver, like platters and stuff?
Platters, spoons, anything silver.
Wow.
And a lot of people that were leaving that I knew said that they left because there was a lot of silver. That was my take from it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see like what different vendors focus on and like what everyone has a niche. And I think a lot of it is, what are you finding? But then a lot of it is like, what is your style and what do you gravitate towards? And I think that for me, like it's so personal. Like I'm not like an old dude who like just knows about jewelry and does this.
Yeah.
Like this is like my style and my passion and they're my babies. So I think it's interesting to see what people focus on.
And what would you consider estate, like, okay, define the term estate jewelry.
Okay, so estate is anything pre-owned. So something could be modern and be estate. So estate is like the big umbrella, and then vintage is 20 years or older. So technically something from the year 2000 is technically vintage. In my mind, I would categorize it as like modern estate, if I were listing it. But technically 20 years or older is vintage, and then antique is 100 years or older. So it's interesting because, like, for example, the 1930s or like the late 1920s aren't yet antique. But like if something was made in 1920, then it's antique. And, so
Technicalities.
Technicalities, yes, but those are the things. So I do carry modern estate if it's something that like really speaks to me. If I see something and I'm like, this is beautiful, I would wear it, I know my clients will love it, then I will totally, go for something that's modern estate. But my real passion is like Edwardian through like the 60s.
And you also on your Instagram you have a lot of Art Deco. I guess to go with the Art Deco ring.
I love Art Deco. I love it. That was my first love. So yeah, that I definitely gravitate toward those pieces.
Yeah, like I love Halloween, but I always tend to gravitate. My wardrobe is always bright colored. Even my hair is yellow. So it's like you just gravitate to what you like in your past. That's why I find it funny that you said your story and then I put it together because I was like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the really special thing about shopping vintage. There's so many amazing dealers out there, and I think you go to each one of them for a piece of their personal style or their taste. So, I have clients who come to me for certain things and go to other sellers for other things. And it's so personal, and it's like so unique to each person that if you're real and authentic to who you are and what your taste is, people will gravitate toward that if they share your style.
What is like the most like crazy thing a client has asked to find?
Huh. I don't know that I have done anything crazy. There are a lot of vendors who specialize in Victorian mourning jewelry,
Oh,
which is fascinating. And to be honest, it's not my area, so I don't really, I don't really carry it, because there are other people who are so passionate about it, and that's their thing. It's not really my look, but um, the mourning jewelry often has hair art. So hair of a deceased family member or loved one would be like arranged in these beautiful curls or these braids, and then put inside a locket and put inside a ring. So it's like
wow.
very romantic. Yeah, it's very romantic and like very sweet. But then if you really think about it, it's also kind of creepy. Like,
Well, I used to be a mortician.
yeah, so so that I think is something like really specific, and there's a huge market for it. But it's not my thing specifically. If I found something amazing, I would go for it. But I'm sure people who specialize in mourning jewelry get a lot of really unique requests. I think my yeah, there hasn't really been anything that's like crazy. However, I do sell a lot of divorce rings, which I guess is kind of unique. And it's something
Explain the divorce ring. I saw it.
yes. So, I have been divorced, and when I got divorced, I missed wearing my ring. So and I was also like in charge of my finances for the first time in my life, without having to like check with anyone, or like, I was my own woman for the first time ever. So I found this amazing Edwardian dinner ring, and I bought it, and it was my divorce ring. And so I shared the story on my Instagram, and now it's a small sliver of my clientele, but it's a really cool and like meaningful
Yes.
process to be a part of, to like help other women celebrate their independence, celebrate themselves, and buy divorce rings. So yeah, I guess that's different.
That is different, but that's amazing because it's like a personal level for you, and and so many women can relate to that same
Yeah.
feeling. I think that's great. And what is a dinner ring?
Okay, so a dinner ring it's like a cocktail ring. Gosh, I brought all this jewelry with me to show you, but I didn't bring my ring. So let me show you.
I
Okay,
didn't know
yes,
there was a
yes.
dinner ring or cocktail ring or
Okay,
a
so
potion,
this,
a poison ring. I've seen those.
yes, so this is how do the influencers do it? I can't do it. You just showed. Okay, so this is like the shape of a dinner ring. This is also called a navette ring because it's shaped like a boat, a little boat. But it's long on the finger. This is 1930s. And mine is Edwardian, so it's like 1890s,
So pretty.
1910, like somewhere in there. But like that would be a dinner ring, and like this would be a cocktail ring.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's
So
different.
isn't that cool? So I brought lots of goodies to show, but the cool thing about the ring that I chose was that it wasn't like specifically engagement ring ish. Like it could be an engagement ring if
It's
you
a
wanted it
divorce
to be,
ring.
but it's a divorce ring. So like it didn't feel like I was buying like a solitaire, although, you could, but yeah, it was a really symbolic purchase for me. And it's just been so much fun to like help other women celebrate something that most of society gets weird around,
Yeah.
you know?
That's true. Like the taboos are slowly coming out, which is good because it
Yeah,
makes people feel more comfortable and talk and, more love all
exactly.
around.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just like small soapbox for a second, but my first marriage was really emotionally abusive, and I didn't trust my gut about things that were wrong. I just kept thinking, like, I'm not going to quit at this. Like, I've never been physically harmed. Um, I just told myself all sorts of excuses for staying because I felt like there was this societal pressure. And I think the more we talk about these things and the more we talk about like what a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship look like, and the more we destigmatize divorce, I hope that more people will be able to get out of relationships that aren't good for them.
Yeah. Well said. I've only been in 2 relationships in my life, and I'm with the second one right now.
Yeah, I am too. So I dated in between, but my husband now is like my second, like, real relationship, and my second
And he's
husband.
in
So
opera, no? Your husband?
yes,
Yes.
yeah, my husband is an opera singer, which is great
Did you
because
guys meet in opera?
it's we did, yeah. We were like work buddies
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
for
off.
No, it's fine. We were work buddies for like a year before we started dating. So we had this great friendship. We respected each other as colleagues. It was a really like easy, nice transition. And now, now that we're like stuck together all the time, that friendship is really important.
Oh, yeah, it's really important because if not, you'll go crazy.
You go crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a question about the jewelry. So,
Yes.
does he help you with the jewelry?
No, he's very supportive,
Oh,
and
that's important.
he like notices things. He gives like very informed compliments, and he has like an interest in it because I have an interest in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like he's very supportive about it. Also, he is like totally open to wearing jewelry himself, which makes me really happy because I'm like always on the crusade to get men to like embrace wearing jewelry again. Men have always worn jewelry, and then it just goes in and out of style for strange reasons. So, like,
See, that's something I didn't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, it's like it just kind of goes like a wave, but men have worn jewelry for much longer than they haven't, if
Yeah,
that makes
that
sense.
makes
It's
sense.
Yeah, it's been in fashion for a lot of history. So I always have fun like buying cufflinks and buying little like lapel pins, and it's fun for me because
It's your passion.
it's my thing. But yeah, so he's supportive, but he's not like in the business. But he will be like, "Oh, that's new," and I'm always like, "Oh, it's for the store," and sometimes it's not for the store; it's for me. But
It's for my personal collection.
yes.
And how do you get so when you find a piece of jewelry, what do you look for, or do you have like a do you know what to look for, or do you look you do a
Yes.
preliminary, then like go get it like how does it work?
Yeah, so my inventory comes from a wide variety of places. So it could come from like an antique wholesaler who has done a lot of the kind of vetting first. It could come from an estate or an antique store where they may or may not really know what they have. I'm generally not like digging through piles at a thrift store. That's a lot of work with not a huge chance of finding anything good. So usually, the really, really good stuff comes from estate wholesalers and antique vendors and people within my professional network who have the good stuff. But a lot of gemstones go misidentified. So I buy something, I have a general idea of what it is, what the market value is, what I'm willing to spend. And then if it's something that I feel, needs to be appraised, if it's something like really high value or something very unique, I will send it to my appraiser, who's a graduate gemologist, and he does a full dossier on it. But I do have a lot of training myself. So a lot of what I find, I know what it is. I have the tools at home to test and verify, to test gemstones, diamonds, metal content. And say, for example, like I'm at an antique mall. Like one of my favorite things is like, on the highway, you see like antique mall, exit, whatever. Like
yes, I love those.
You have to stop.
Yes.
Like you never know what you're going to find. And there are all these little booths and like maybe no one's been in there for 20 years. I mean, it's always so exciting. So say I'm at one of those and I'm like going through like a case of jewelry. I always bring a jeweler's loupe, which is like that little magnifying thing that you hold to your eye so you can see it magnified. And I have one that has a built-in light because sometimes usually the lighting in those antique malls is very dim. And my loupe magnifies 45 times. Oh. So I am like, when I look at something, say I find a diamond ring, say it's an old European cut diamond, which is one of the old cuts that I look for. I'll check it out, see if there's any damage or any chips to the stone, see the condition it's in, and then make a decision on whether or not it's something that I want to bring into the store. Then when I get it home, send it to the appraiser, do tests on my own, photograph it, research any hallmarks. So it's a lot. Yes. It's a lot of work to like really like figure out what you're dealing with, find the right things, photograph them in a way that really captures like what they actually look like because you're shopping online. Yeah. So yeah, it's a labor of love, but it is a lot of work.
And it also must be satisfying when you find out, if you find something, the European cut, the stuff you're looking for, and
yes.
Or if you have an idea of what it is and then you get confirmation, that must be like, yeah.
It's really exciting. It's really exciting. So like diamonds for me are fairly easy. I know a lot about them. They're fairly easy for me to, figure out and identify and classify and all of that. But like sapphires, for example, are really, really complicated. It's difficult with a tester to tell if it is lab created or natural because they have the same chemical makeup. It's tough to know if they've been heat treated or something. So I found this sapphire ring and I just had a feeling about it. Like I was like, I think this is really good. Like I think this is like a really, really amazing natural sapphire. But it was a risk. And then I took it to my my appraiser and he was like, this is a really, really good one. And I was like, it's so exciting. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I have a question. So it's escaping me now. Oh, but how do you feel about repro jewelry?
I'm fine with it. I think it depends on like what it is about vintage jewelry that you're drawn to. So if it's just the look of it, I think repro is great. Like there are some jewelers who do such an amazing job of doing reproduction pieces. They're using old cut diamonds. They're using like the techniques that a jeweler would use during that era. And the pieces are absolutely stunning. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I just kind of geek out on the fact that something is so old, and it's the only one of that piece that exists.
And it's lasted this long.
It's lasted this long. Yeah. So I think like that's something that really appeals to me. Like, I have a ring here, and it's like a really cute, like diamond, wide band. And inside it has the initials of the couple and their wedding date.
Oh.
Like they got married on November 16th, 1952. And like, I just think that's such a cool thing that like it's lived a life. It's been meaningful to people at like really important milestones in their life. And then you get to continue its story. And that for me is like really cool and meaningful. So it's more than just the look. It's like the story of the piece.
The continuation.
Yeah.
The sequel.
Exactly.
And what's the oldest piece of jewelry that you've ever come across? If you could, or whichever one you think.
Yeah, I have one right here that it's a little signet ring, and it's hallmarked, I think, 1866. Ooh. And the reason I know this is because it is British. And jewelry from England has very, very strict hallmarks. Like everything has to pass through the assay office and get stamped. So there's a little stamp, and you can look up the clues, and it tells you where it was made, when it was made. So yeah. So often, you don't have those like exact stamps. You're just kind of putting things together. But this ring, I know for sure, was made in 1866.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty cool.
That's a lot of sequels.
A lot of sequels.
But this is a good type of sequel. It's not like sequels.
Exactly.
Right. So you know the real deal.
Yes.
So what is the real deal when it comes to jewelry?
Okay. Expand on that.
Like, so let me see here. What I mean by this is, so what would be your 3 tips when looking for jewelry, antique jewelry? Okay. That's a better way of putting it.
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is read up on old cut diamonds, because that's a really, really big indicator that something that you have is vintage or antique. So the modern round brilliant is, the modern round diamond that we have today. It has like predecessors before technology got to the point where cutters could create like the perfect, like scientifically perfect cut. So before the modern non-brilliant, you have early modern non-brilliant, you have transitional cut, old European cut, old mine cut, rose cuts, and they're the older you get, the more rustic the look is. Okay. They were cut to sparkle by candlelight or lamplight instead of electrical light. So they shine in a different way. And that's a big thing. Once you learn to identify those cuts, then that's a sure sign. It might be in a reproduction setting, but at least part of that ring is quite old. So learn how to identify your old cuts. Always travel with a loop. Keep it in your purse, keep it in your car, because you want to be able to get really close, see the condition of the piece, look for any hallmarks, any like metal stamps. And then that's the thing, know your hallmarks. You start knowing different maker's marks after a while. Like, I'll know that something is Traub, and then I know generally, what era it belongs to. So I think the overarching thing is just start window shopping as much as possible. And the more you see, the more you kind of get that context, and you know what to look for, and you can say like, oh, I've seen that before. I know what that is.
Oh, these are great. I hope the ladies listening have this like on the background with their boyfriends if they want them to propose to a nice ring.
Yes. Oh, and something really important too, if you want a vintage or antique ring as your engagement ring, it's really important to be very specific with your partner about that because it's definitely not the first thing that people think of.
That's true. I
And
didn't think about that.
yeah, so you have to be like really specific about it. And I think generally when anyone's shopping for a gift for their significant other,
Think new.
it's nice to like have a hint, you know. It's nice to not have to shop blind.
But you're right. I would think, now that I think about it, it's like if I'm buying something that's of large value, I would think new and big instead of
Yeah,
old.
exactly. And where if you want vintage or antique, it's going to change where you look for that. So you're
To
not
you.
going to go
Everyone should go to
to
you.
me. But generally you wouldn't go into Tiffany or,
Yeah.
into a major jewelry retailer. They won't have those kinds of things. So I think if I always tell people, if you have your heart set on, vintage or antique, one, you could just tell your partner, just, communicate right to them. But if you want, a little more surprise, like tell your mom, tell your best friend, tell his best friend, like start a Pinterest page and like add everyone.
Start just I've seen the memes that people are just talking to their cell phone so that they say that phones could hear you and then all the ads start coming for eBay.
It's terrifying, but probably true.
It's true. I remember at my
So true.
job we were talking about some random thing. I forgot what it was, but it was so random that's nothing to do with me. It was to do with like my boss and a customer, and then next thing you know, I got an ad on my phone. I was like, is this a coincidence?
Yeah, no, it's so true. Oh man, this is, but use it to your advantage,
Now I know where to get this item.
Exactly.
And then they could track you on what websites you go on, and then you go to another website, and Google knows, like, okay, you were here. Let's put ads. You might want to get this later.
Yeah, I know.
I've learned so much about jewelry. I would have never, things I don't really think about. But now
Yeah,
I'm so intrigued when I go to these antique malls. I'm gonna just keep an eye. I gotta get one of the
yeah, got a little loop.
and then look.
And I really like the ones with the lights. It makes a huge difference because those places are usually pretty dimly lit.
It's dim. They want it on purpose so you don't see that the stuff is
Yeah,
really old. Like I like
right.
to collect lucite purses, so I like to look for like tags and stuff. So I have a little shelf
Yeah,
here, but that's what I get at the antique malls. But
yeah.
it's dark in there.
It's dark. I collect vintage postcards
Ooh.
and old jewelry boxes, like the little ring boxes. If I allowed myself to, I could just like I could be a hoarder if I allowed myself to do that. So I only let myself collect three things, jewelry included, and they're all very small, so I can like keep them
Now you
like
have a museum. That's the next step.
yes,
Have an antique.
exactly.
There's somebody in California that she had a huge collection of vintage makeup,
Mhm.
compacts and lipsticks and
Yeah.
stuff, and now she has like a museum.
That's so cool. That's the dream.
Yeah.
That's like I want to do that.
Yeah, and I went to Vegas and there was a special effects Tom Sevlin, and he has like all his movie props in this like place, and it's called museum. So you literally pay to see his collection. So that is a dream. There you go, pay to see jewelry by Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be really fun. Or I mean, I could collect all sorts of things if I had a
There
museum.
you go.
That's like
First haul is gonna be ring jewelry boxes.
yeah.
It will be fun. Hi. So, do you have anything else you want to say about jewelry, or do you have something to show, or anything else to show?
Oh, yeah. I do have something really cool to show. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm actually really gravitating toward 1940s jewelry these days. I mean, I love it all, but I go through like different fixations. So this is called a tank ring. Let's see, okay, so this is called a tank ring. It was made in the 1940s, and World War II era jewelry was super military inspired. So these rings became really popular. They're shaped like tanks. They're inspired like, I mean, and it could be, I mean, you could take someone out with this ring if you needed to.
Yeah, I didn't think 1940s had big rings, but look.
1940s was super, super bold. Like, really, you see a lot of 40s things that you think, oh, that looks super modern. And in fact, like 80s and 40s, like 80s borrowed a lot from the 40s, but these like big, bold, kind of like menswear inspired jewelry pieces were really popular. And then this is rose gold and white gold, and rose gold is like having a super moment right now.
Yes.
But as with vintage, like everything that's old comes back, so like nothing is truly new. It's just like a reinvention of something old. So rose gold is it's gold alloyed with many different metals, but copper is the one that gives it that rose color. And during World War II, it was an easier to create alloy than yellow gold. So you see a lot of rose gold pieces because that
something else I wouldn't thought.
Yeah, it was easier to manufacture, and people would. They would bring in their old pieces and melt them down to create to create new pieces. So it's like, which is something people do today too. So, again, everything just kind of goes in cycles.
What is one style of jewelry that you've seen that you would love to make a comeback?
Oh, well,
besides men wearing jewelry.
Yes, because that is a big one. Like, guys, just wear your jewelry. Like it's, but okay, what would I like to see come back? I guess for me that's a tough question because I don't really go by like modern jewelry trends. If there's something I like it. I'm looking at my collection now and I'm like, what? I mean, this is like my, my store. Oh, okay. This is really fun. This is like 1960s. And I think like these big, bold enamel pieces. It's a snake. Wow. So awesome. It's gold and it has green enamel over the gold. He has like a little face. It's so like cute. It's so cute. And I think and this was like such a style in the 60s. I remember my grandmother hated snakes, but she had a lot of this like blue and green enamel gold jewelry. And I think that this is like such a fun look. And I think that it would go with modern fashion. Like it's bold, it's unique, it's a conversation starter. I think like animal jewelry is something that should definitely come back. I said it first.
Yes. You heard it here first, guys. Animal jewelry is going to come back. And if you need a wedding ring or any type of jewelry, you got to go to Sara.
Yes.
And what is your Instagram and website? Because
yes, I am on Instagram all the time, and my handle is Songbird Sara Jewelry, and Sara has no H. So Songbird Sara Jewelry, and then my website is songbirdsaraantiquejewelry.com.
Yeah, and I'll also have it in the description down below and on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And great. Sara, I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
It means a lot to me, and I learned a lot, and I even wrote down a couple of terms of jewelry cuts that I want to check out.
Yeah, and feel free to ask me questions, anyone. Like, send me a DM if there's something that, you're like, I would love for you to talk more about this on your Instagram. This is something I'm interested in learning about. It's always nice to hear what people want to learn about.
Yeah, especially since you're so knowledgeable. It's amazing.
Thank you.
What I've loved so far about doing this podcast, and I've just learned so much about people's different passions and how much they are, you don't realize it until you speak to somebody one-on-one of how passionate they are about a subject. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much.
And I love the vintage community. Like everyone has their niche and like
Yes.
that thing that they geek out about. So it's always cool to like tap those connections and be like, okay, this is your area, maybe not mine. Like tell me what you know. Like just unleash your learning on me.
And opera, I love Christian Dior. He was posting some dresses for I don't know the opera name, but I just know the dresses were fabulous.
I have to look that up. And also like Versace.
Oh,
He designed, if you've seen the American Crime Story,
yes.
you know, but that is true that Gianni Versace designed the costumes for Capriccio in San Francisco, and I think that's so cool. Like I actually was talking to a friend who did a production that was designed by Alaya, and he wouldn't come, it was in Europe, and he wouldn't come to do fittings at the opera house. Instead, all the singers had to fly to his showroom in Paris. And I was like, please me, like, can I have a gig like that? I want to go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's not standard, and like,
No.
I don't personally have a story like that, but I know someone who did, so that's
Just the possibility is there, you know.
the possibility is there.
That counts for something.
Yes.
All right, thank you again, Sarah, and
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here, and I will see you all next Wednesday. I have another guest, and I hope you guys have a fabulous night.